Hi guys, let's read a book. Tooth Fairy Magic by Joanne Barkin, illustrated by Jody Wheeler. I love this one because there's like glitter on it. Tooth Fairy Magic. Kitty! Tooth Fairy Magic. Less than an hour before dawn, the Tooth Fairy flew into Willie Weber's bedroom. Willie was snoring softly. "I'm late," muttered the Tooth Fairy as she reached under Willie's pillow. She pulled out a small white tooth and darted away. Then she remembered, "I have to leave the silver dollar." The Tooth Fairy spun around and dived toward the bed again. Her net bag whirled around with her and thumped Willie on the nose. Willie gasped and sat up. What was that? "Oh, Crumwagget," said the fairy. "You weren't supposed to wake up." "Well, I did," said Willie, rubbing his nose. "Who are you anyway, a tooth fairy?" The Tooth Fairy stamped her tiny foot on the bed cover. "Yes, and it's my first night on the job. Everything has gone wrong. I dropped one tooth and it cracked. I'm an hour behind schedule, and now I've awakened one of the tooth losers." Uh-oh. She's having a rough night. Willie just stared at the fairy with his mouth open. She began looking for something frantically. "I've lost my address list," she wailed, "and I have 3 more pickups in the neighborhood. I remember the names, but I don't know which houses to go to. I'm going to lose my job." "Gee," murmured Willie, "maybe I can help." "Shh," said the fairy. "I'm not supposed to talk to tooth losers." "I know where all the kids live," said Willie. "You do?" asked the Tooth Fairy. "Sure," said Willie. "I can draw you a map." The fairy glanced out the window and shook her head. "There's not enough time. I must finish my work before dawn. Maybe I could take you with me," she shivered. "No fairy has ever done that before, but I'm desperate." "Let's go," said Willie. He grabbed his bathrobe and pulled on a pair of warm socks. With a shower of sparkles, the fairy tied her hair wreath onto Willie's finger. Then she took his hand and off they went. As they flew down the street, the fairy said, "Tracy Troop was on my list. Where does she live?" "Yellow house on the corner," said Willie. "Her bedroom is on the 2nd floor over the kitchen." The fairy put Willie down in the backyard and zoomed up to Tracy's window. She disappeared into the house and reappeared a minute later. Oh, so fun. "Done," said the fairy, slipping another little white tooth into her bag. "Who else was on the list?" asked Willie. Archie Acker, and Violet Vernon," answered the fairy. "But we really must hurry. The sky is getting lighter every minute." The fairy flew in and out of Archie's house very quickly. Then outside Violet's house, Willie waited and waited and waited. Uh-oh. "What happened?" asked Willie when the Tooth Fairy finally appeared. "Violet Vernon sleeps with 6 pillows," said the fairy. "It took a while to find her tooth." "It sure did," said Willie. Then he pointed to the far end of the street. A brilliant half circle of sun glowed above the horizon. The fairy gasped and cried, "Triple Crumwagget!" What is that at the end of the street? Do you guys know what that is? The sunrise. It's the morning. It's very early in the morning. The Tooth Fairy pulled Willie into the air and began to fly as fast as she could. If I don't get you home before the sun is up completely, she panted, I'll lose my job and my magic. They whizzed along the street and whipped around a corner. Willie saw his house up ahead. Suddenly, flop! Something pulled them to a stop with a tremendous jerk. Look at the puppy like, oh, what's going on up there? It's the leg of my pajamas, cried Willie. It's caught on a tree branch. Rip it loose, said the fairy, and hurry. No way, said Willie. These are new pajamas. Grumbling something, the Tooth Fairy swooped around Willie. With nimble fingers, she pulled and twisted the fabric until she worked it free. Then she grabbed one of Willie's hands and whoosh! Willie found himself standing in his bedroom just as the sun rose above the horizon. Thank you, Willie, said the fairy. She put her wreath back on her head. I'll never forget you. Get up, dear, called Willie's mother. You're late this morning. Willie opened one eye and leaped out of bed. Mrs. Weber looked surprised. Willie, she said, why in the world are you wearing those socks? Willie was puzzled for a minute. Then, all at once, he remembered everything. I put on socks so I wouldn't get cold feet, he said. Willie quickly lifted his pillow. On the sheet lay a shiny silver dollar and something else. Crumb wagon, whispered Willie as he picked up the tiny paper. It's the Tooth Fairy's address list. It was under his pillow all along. But he was very helpful. The end. Tooth Fairy Magic by Joanne Barkin, illustrated by Jody Wheeler. Oh, I love that one. So fun. Have you guys lost any teeth yet? It's fun to get things under your pillow. Bye.